a fun exercise planned, but before we do that exercise, I just want to talk about resetting expectations around submitting deliverables, aka homework. I've been giving you guys a lot of grace. I know we've had technical difficulties on
Recording
the GitHub
in
side,
progress.
and then individuals have had technical difficulties. But we're 2 weeks in now. So at this point, I think that everyone should be comfortable submitting the homework properly. If you're not, Ben is going to make a thread in the classroom channel so you can let us know so that today we can get it all worked out. Because moving forward, we're going to stick to the deliverable submission requirements that are in the class wiki, which means that deliverables are due the next morning at 9 a.m. If they're assigned Monday through Thursday. Friday deliverables are due Monday at 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday deliverables can be resubmitted up until up until Monday at 9 a.m. I personally do like grading the homework. I'm getting a little overwhelmed with the chasing after people to find out if it's done, following up with like broken links because you sent a link to like the repo instead of a link to the pull request, et cetera, et cetera. So this is sort of my heads up to you that I need everyone to be a little bit more aware of what they're doing when they're submitting the homework, because I'm not going to spend so much time following up if I receive the wrong thing. You will just be marked as incomplete. Does that make sense to everybody? And do you guys have any questions? Because now is definitely the time to ask them. Yes, Michelle.
I just want to apologize because I haven't turned anything in this week. I thought we had until Monday, so that was a misunderstanding, but I'll go ahead and turn yesterday's and the days before today.
Yes, that's a really good point. So everything is due the next morning at 9 a.m., but you can resubmit it as many times as you want until the following Monday. But if you don't turn it in before Monday, then you won't get it graded to get the feedback to know if you need to resubmit it. So you should try and submit it as soon as possible. And I mean, most people are doing a pretty good job, but I don't want it to be a shock suddenly when you have an incomplete that you thought that like next week I could hand that in. You know what I mean, guys? Yeah. All right, cool. Any other questions? No, we feel good about this? All right, well then, let us move on to the box model. Hold on a sec. Let me send you guys a link here. Sorry, I'm not computer savvy enough to like get to Slack without stopping my screen share. All right. So I have put in Slack the link to this morning's repo. All right, and it is pretty simple. Don't let that deceive you though. All you're doing is using CSS and HTML to recreate a site that looks like this. Right? So your repo has two files in it, a CSS file, style.css, and an index.html file. And you can use gridbox, flexbox, or grid, etc., whatever you think you need to recreate this image here. Does that make sense? All right, guys. Any questions before I let you get started? All right, cool.
Recording stopped.
Sorry guys, I just thought my camera was on for the entire time and it was off, so just want to let you know.
Can you guys check your the repository, it says that I don't have access rights to it.
Michelle, I'm working on it.
Yeah, it said I didn't have the rights to it too, but then when I did it again, it worked.
Michelle, have you tried refreshing?
I'm gonna try it one more time.
Thanks, Omar.
It worked. Thank you.
Good. Hey, Abdullah, what's up?
Hey, I'm having a little bit of an issue. Every time I try to change anything in the CSS, nothing is changing on the page.
What kind of things are you changing in the CSS?
So I tried to change like the color. I tried to change the background color of the body. I tried to change the color of the H1 that I made. Tried to test it so many times, nothing happening.
Let's go in a breakout room so you can
Okay.
chat with me. How'd you guys feel about that? So? Yeah. Did anyone complete it successfully? Not all the way. Magdalena, kinda. Orion, a little bit. All right. Let's. Do we have time to like have people help me put this together? You think, or should I just go through a solution?
Oh yeah, we got time for that. Totally.
So, can I have a volunteer to help me get started? Pretend I don't know any CSS at all, which is pretty easy to do because my CSS is not great. Let me open my index.html too.
Well, the first thing that I did was I made sure that I had a style parentheses for almost everything. The head, the body, the main, the footer, and I typed in a text in the HTML so that I could see them in my web browser on the web page. So I could see it being edited. That was very helpful to me. I don't know if anyone else did that.
I think that is a good place
That's how
to
I started.
start. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with typing some text in. And then you targeted every element, right? That's what you said, Jackson?
Yes, that's correct.
So let's do that. Okay. What is it supposed to say?
I heard it say here's some inline contact block, inline block footer. Yeah, what it says on the picture.
Recording in progress.
All right. What do you guys want me to do about this block, and inline block? How do you think we should handle that? Are we thinking maybe adding some divs?
I added 2 sections, and each section had 2 divs. One section had 2 block divs, and the other section had inline block divs. I mean, sorry, 2 divs with class of block. That's how I did it. And then second section, 2 divs with a class of inline block.
Okay, so we have 2 divs in the first section with a class of block. And then 2 divs in the second section with a class of inline block.
Yes, and then also the div have all the 2 divs in the first section have the text of block, so you can see it on the page, and then the other section has also the text. The 2 divs have the text of inline block, so this way you'll be able to see it on the page.
And okay, does that look good to you guys? Maybe I should save my file first. All right, this is what we have so far. Should we go in and target all of the elements? What else do we have? We have main. We have section. And we have div. Is that all of them? All right.
So actually, the way I did it, I don't know how anybody else did it, but the first section had a class of blocks, and then the second section I put class of inline blocks. So I have like a parent for each section, because then if I wanted to align the inline blocks next to each other, I had to target the parent. So
Good plan.
Yeah, I did it the same way.
Okay. So should I have a class on these divs or only on the sections?
Sorry, I was muted. So the sections have a different class. So for example, my section has a class of blocks, not block, it's a different class.
Okay.
So the first section, the class of blocks,
Are
and then
these-
the second section, I put the class of inline blocks, but we can name it something else if it's too confusing.
No, I
Real
think-
quick, I noticed that your the head class in CSS will focus on where we have the links. It needs to be header
Oh,
because
good catch.
that is what is defined.
That is absolutely right.
Don't you have to put the period for calling the classes in CSS? It doesn't matter.
I do have to put the period for calling the classes. The question is, am I calling the classes right now?
Right now, it doesn't look like you are.
No, I am not. Right now, I'm targeting the actual div element, the section element, etc., etc.
Okay.
I am going to make a block and an inline block class right now. Okay, so this block section is some sort of container, right? So what does that mean we're going to do with it? Does this look right, Magdalena?
Yes, I had the opposite. I have this section as the class of blocks and then div as block, but
Okay.
it still works. It's the same thing. It's just
Okay. Okay, cool. So, what do we
So-
do here, guys? Any ideas?
I just did display of, or I don't even think I defined display because I think it's automatically block, but just display of block for those ones since they're going to span the entire width of the container they're in.
Cool. Do we need to put anything on inline block?
I did something a little, I think a little different because I technically used flex. And so I had like basically it was inside a row parent and then split it up into two columns.
Okay, so this inline block, that would be the row, right?
Right.
I did display flex and then flex direction row and then justify content center. But I'm looking at the HTML and section class inline block. Okay, never mind. Sorry, that's my bad.
It's okay. So here's what we got so far, guys. Maybe we can work on putting some borders.
Yeah, I would also maybe in the body just do text align center because I think that's gonna make it a little more manageable maybe.
Okay. All right.
So for me, the inline blocks were are displaying next to each other. Flex row and center.
How can we fix that?
It worked for me, so I don't know why it's not working here.
Center. Can we do space between? Nope.
I think I put, oh, well, I didn't use flex actually, so never mind. I used display inline grid. to get them next to each other, but it wasn't flex.
Can't you just do a display inline block?
Where do you want? Sorry, I got distracted by my phone. Where do you want to do that? Display inline block?
To the class of inline block.
Uh-huh.
And then I think we need to give it a, anyways, we'll get to the paddings and all that later.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, so are you saying that instead of flex?
Yeah, so instead of flex, do display inline block. So yeah, that's it.
The plan. Okay. So what can we do next, guys?
You can make the background colors and the borders.
We can make the background colors and the borders. How do we want to do that?
So you can start with the body,
Okay.
where we've already below where we already done text align. You can do border, and then you can set what, 2 pixel, whatever you want that, and then do solid, and then the color black. And you'll probably need a set of margin and padding to it. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Padding. Give it some space.
All right. How much padding do we want to put here? Like 10?
10 or 20, yeah.
Nice. 15. That's good.
Okay.
All right. So we have a line around the outside. Let's just look at this.
Yep.
How do we get some lines around?
So now you can create a class, or you can go to each individual. You can go to the header, and you can add the background color, and then do the same kind of step we did with the border to each one of those.
I think I wrote down what color this is. All right. So where do we want this background color? On the header and where else? In main?
Header and main and footer.
Footer. Oh, right. So now we seem to have a big block.
I also added more width and height to shape it more like the one that we're supposed to make.
Okay.
So I added that in the body tab.
Add width and height. How much height should we put here?
I put 610 pixels for the height and then 575 pixels for the width.
All right.
And then also like each element needs more spacing between each other. So
what, some margin?
Yeah, margin. So header needs some margin. Main and the other elements.
Header, main.
Mm-hmm.
Footer. Any other ones?
Yes.
On all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
The blocks should also have margin.
Should
I
we be
think-
targeting the individual blocks?
Yes, we need to target the individual blocks. So class blocks and class inline blocks.
So blocks on the right. All right.
Mm.
Maybe they need some borders. What are we thinking, guys?
Yes, they also need borders.
So what do we think needs borders?
All the individual elements and a background color of white too.
Background color of white. So on main here, I have a border. Should I put a background color of white, or should I leave the one that's already there?
Leave that color.
One in section. Do we need a background color here?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll be for the specific blocks. So the div tags with the class blocks.
So rather than putting that there, we want to put it on div, or we want to put it on the blocks tag.
I would do blocks tag.
Okay.
Maybe not.
The inline blocks also need it.
Inline blocks. Do we want to put it here, or do we want to put it on this single inline block?
No, inline blocks and blocks as well.
Doesn't seem to be working out for us, guys.
Otherwise, it's odd. It's worked for me. I mean, I don't know why.
It's odd. The main background
I
color-
use different tag names, so I'm trying to look and on yours and mine, but
It's interesting. When we had it on section, but we need it to be on the individual blocks, so that's not going to work.
what if you got rid of section tag? Since they have class anyway.
Okay.
Try on block, margin and background color and border.
Oh, nice. Do we
So
want this on inline block also?
The same thing for inline block.
Okay. Cool. So we don't this.
Footer also needs a border, and all of the items need more padding. So header, here's some inline content block, inline block, both blocks, both inline blocks, and footer.
So I feel like this padding is not doing anything? Or is that just me?
So you're looking at inline blocks, right?
Yeah.
and we're trying to get the padding between the text and the borders.
Nice.
Yeah, let's open the inspector and play around with that. Let's use our let's check it out.
What is going
So
on with
if you write, yeah, there you go, perfect. Main section, there we go. Let's click on one. Check out the styles tab associated with that. So you might have to.
Is there something I can do to make this styles tab be on the side?
That the three dots on the top right of your the DevTools display, you can actually have that the first option is where you can have it not docked in the window, but separately.
Yeah, good plan.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the margin's not being applied. It's being overridden. And it appears as though padding is not being applied either. So it's interesting. Let's go back to your CSS and see what's happening. So this is your inline block class. So 15px is not connected.
Wow.
So
you guys all let me copy and paste that and didn't say anything.
yeah, so let's refresh the page with that and see what happens.
Double checking. Right.
Nothing there. And then where are you having padding applied? 15.
We have padding.
Okay, margin padding in blocks. Which is fine. And then inline blocks, you have 15 and 15. And it looks like, can you save your HTML file?
Yes.
Okay, and refresh your page.
Wow. Look at that, guys. Just gotta remember to save your HTML files.
All right, so interestingly enough, inline block, you might want to put a display of inline block between lines 58 and 59. And you got 2 colons there. All right, and
We change this back to flex.
yep.
Something better, guys. Let's see, what is this supposed to look like? These guys need to be separated. These guys need to be separated. And these guys need to be separated.
So it looks like they are separated. We just need to place a border on the inline blocks class.
Interesting.
The styling at sections, inline blocks and class block. I think we have to get rid of that. Get rid of the border from the blocks, class, and inline block. And then change the background color back to blue on blocks and inline blocks. And then apply background color white to blocks, div class blocks, and then the div class inline blocks.
Oh, you guys are so close. Let me stretch these.
And I think here some inline content also needs a border and a white background and more
Also
padding.
does. Okay.
Yeah, I think there'll have to be a new element created or a tag so that we can
Okay.
target
Mhm.
that directly.
What should we create here?
I had a paragraph here. Originally I had a header, but it was too big. So I just changed it to paragraph. Yes, right under main. And then I also put two spans, one span between Sam and a second span for inline. So Sam can be italic and then the inline can be bold. And I also gave those spans different classes so I can style them later.
So we gave this span a class.
Mhm. Both of them and then different class. So one can be italic and then one can be bold.
This one is italic, right?
I also just used inline CSS, but I don't know if there's really, if you have an external style sheet, I don't know if you want to use inline CSS at all or not.
Typically you don't. So the hierarchy with which CSS style is applied, inline will override anything coming in from a style sheet.
Okay.
If you have a separate style tag at the bottom of your page, that would override a style sheet as well. So the hierarchy would be inline, inside the page style, and then style sheets. And if you are creating style sheets, you want to avoid adding inline style only because it creates behavioral issues as far as the application of style.
Got it. Okay, cool.
What is bold? It's like strong, right? Heavy.
I think just bold.
Am I thinking of
A
the
font, no, font weight.
font? Wait, that's what it is. Thank you. All right, guys.
And then we need to style the paragraph.
We have the paragraph. All this content. Is that cool with you guys? What are we gonna do here?
Background color white and also border and some padding and some margin, I believe.
Okay. Now. How do we get these blocks separated? Or not separated, but stretched?
I just added width to them.
I just added width.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's cheating, guys.
That is cheating? I didn't know. I'm
just
sorry.
messing with you. I'm just messing. Okay, let's make them what, like 200? Actually, not this one. I didn't like it. All right. I'll take it. You guys did good. Do we want to
You
Super.
could probably fix the also the body. It's too, the height is too much, I think.
Height.
Yeah, maybe a little less. Because
Oh,
there is a lot of space. It worked for me, but
well, I changed the proportions a little bit. Okay. You guys have any questions?
I do. I don't know if this needs to be fixed or not, but I did the span also to make something italic and make something bold, and it eliminated the space between the words.
Did you accidentally forget a space between your span?
Let's
Was that?
Like where? Can you show me?
So your closing tag still needs a space. In the text. So if you don't have a space between these two, there's no space in the text. You could put a space after some, or you could put a space before inline.
Okay.
Is that it? Or was it a more complex problem than that?
I like manually put in padding because I was gonna cheat as well. But I'm huh. So like I like with spaces before and after some and inline, it still is squeezing everything together. Like is some inline content, like the whole thing is all of a sudden just one word.
Do you want to share your screen?
Recording stopped.
So
interesting.
Yeah, so I have spaces.
Yes.
But yeah, you can see my whole, and then on my styles, I have the same, like I use italic and bold classes to apply
And
the styling.
if you comment those out, the space goes away.
Or the space comes back.
Or
Oh.
back, right? So something else is doing that. Oops. So what classes do you have on that section?
Italic and bold.
And then what does your inline class look like?
Oh, I have an inline content class for this one, and then an inline block class for these two.
Is it possible that your padding is too high?
For this?
I don't know. Ben, what do you think? The CSS is definitely not my jam.
Yeah, let me take a look.
No, they're still together.
All right, so can I see your HTML?
Yeah.
So you have a div with a class of inline, and then you have spaces between your spans here and spaces in the spans and content as well. However, all of those words are running together. So I'm going to take a look at inline C as a class.
Okay.
And you commented out that padding and you refresh the page.
Yeah, and it just, this is what it did.
Gotcha.
When I commented out. But before that, it was like, the padding is padding around.
I see. So real quick, before we dive into this a little bit, it is 10:30. So for everyone else, do y'all want to take a 10-minute break and we'll come back? And then Jenna, we can take a closer look at what's happening with your text here. So back to your index HTML. You know, quite honestly, I might just replace these with specific tags, like the word some being wrapped with an EM tag. So can you do that?
A BM tag?
EM.
EM. Oh, EM tag.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that is effectively that is a tag that should provide italics.
Right.
So let's just wrap that around the word some and refresh the page. And I want to see if the behavior changes with the change of the tag.
Okay.
Okay, so that is applied there. You're losing spaces though. And you know what? Do me a favor. Can you online? I want to test something on line 13 in the next div, where you just have block. Can you add a space in another word? Okay.
I also have a space here though, and here and is has a space.
Yeah. Okay. So let's. Can you remove the span class with the word inline? I want to just remove that and see what happens with the behavior there.
Inline C.
No. The span class that wraps around the word inline.
Oh, I see.
I just want to remove it, and I want to see if the whole thing. So I want to remove the word inline. I want to remove the span class. I just want to see if there's something happening with that tag. Okay, and let's refresh the page. So that tag, and can I look at the parent inline C once more? Okay, so you have padding of 30%, and then you have a parent of container as well. A margin and padding of 10 pixels. And can I look at your HTML once more? Parent of that is the body class. Can I see that? And actually, you know what? I don't even know why I haven't done this. Let's open your inspector. Go to the thing that's going to show us exactly how the style is applied. Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so you can just click on it. All right, you'll probably the caret around div class inline C. Click, on the right hand side in the your inspector window. See how it has a little triangle beside it? That's
this one?
No.
Oh, this one.
No. Scroll down into your DOM elements. Right? And like here, I'll try to help you out.
All right.
So what I want to do is you need to open this thing up, because you can, when you do that, you'll see the children.
Oh, okay.
So you see the children, and then click on the element some. All right, so just click on it. So it has a text align of center. And do the other elements have a text align of center as well? Like the strings?
Why is not filling up the tank, you said?
No, it looks like they don't.
It is, but very slow because
Is there
the filter is so dirty.
parent that has a
Because
text align
the
of
pipes in this
center?
building suck.
The body.
Let's take
That's
that
why
off.
this thing gets clogged. So that same shit that is clogging this, is clogging the filter. So now
So
this
that is also
it's
not
getting
doing
filtered so
anything
slow.
good. Is there a parent
So if we
of
use
that
too
div
much
that
of
has,
it before it gets to fill it
justify
up,
content
we just have to wait
center
for so
for
long
the
for it to get
div?
filtered.
Oh.
So we're gonna have to change filters
Can we
so
comment
often.
that out?
It sucks though. I don't understand why they don't fix it.
No, still got some.
There's a new technology that I don't know if they can use it for this, but they put like a liquid kind of thing inside the pipe, and they start pushing it with the machine, and it goes in, and then they cut it at the end, and it's the same pipe they had, But now
back in
it's
your
plastic.
dev tools, can you just click on the opening div of
They
inline
use
C?
what's already there, the
So
same
the
pipe. It just
just
becomes
yeah, like
plastic.
when
The
your
inside.
mouse highlights over it,
Here.
not on the caret, but the div itself.
It's
When you
nothing to do
click
with the
on it,
pipe
you
from the
see how the
building.
styles, the
I
computed
can't replace the
styles,
pipe
then
that goes from
display
here
on the
to the
bottom
boiler
of your
room.
display.
Yeah.
So that lets you know what's being applied here. And you can click on those check boxes to turn the styles off or put them back on.
Oh,
As you can
wow.
see, it's
Oh my gosh.
disintegrating. There's
It
gonna
says
be a
right
leak
here.
somewhere
So
in the
the
wall,
done.
display
in the
flex
whole
is doing
building,
that.
and then they're gonna fix it. They're gonna have to break the wall.
Cool.
They don't
So you
fix it
might
because
have
it
to
takes years for it to
reconfigure some of
disintegrate.
that, but there
As
it
you
is.
can
The
see it, you get
display
the
flex
pieces
as a parent
over
of
here.
that div is making that happen.
There's
Oh.
no way to fix it. This is the way it
There we
is.
go. Thank you.
If
Yep.
they don't fix it,
Okay, I will be right back. Y'all.
that's why it's better when we have our own house. We don't have issues with the pipes. What? Yeah. Well, at least we fix it. Here they don't fix it. Hola, papi. Un beso. ¡Mua! Hola, pa. Hola, pa. Hola, pa. Hey, 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 hey.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. How was the break? How was the excursion into some CSS this morning? Very excellent display of pair programming and working with CSS. Definitely not an exact science sometimes, but that's all right. So I have, let me go ahead and
Recording in
start the
progress.
recording, share my screen. On. My display is telling me that you all can see that screen. Is that absolutely true? Perfect. So we have slacked you a link to the lesson. And this is a lesson called Object-Oriented Programming. When you complete the getting started section here, which is effectively forking and cloning this repository and creating an index.js file, give me the cool Doge emoji underneath just to let me know you're on the same page and ready to go. I'm the only one that's put that there. So we'll take a second for people to get their personal setups ready to roll. If you cannot do so, let me know as an emoji in the classroom. And I'll wait just a moment or two. Very cool. I've got 7 people getting their setups going. It's increasing ever so slightly, so that's awesome. I'll go ahead and talk about the overview. I'll also add the lesson objectives to our Slack as well. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different objectives. So what we're basically doing here, we're going to use the new keyword to create objects and shared properties and methods. We're going to describe the roles of classes in JavaScript, the importance of the concept we're talking about this morning, which is object-oriented programming, the concept of inheritance, not only in real life, but also in the scale of programming. And we will create a class that inherits from another using these keywords known as extends and super. So we'll get more into that. But our overview and the concept that we're covering over the morning, object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm based on the concept of objects, which contain data in the form of fields, often known as properties, and functions, often known as methods. So before I even talk about when you define a class, I can think of a couple of different examples of when we've used methods in our lessons thus far, right? Before I say those examples, would anyone like to volunteer what they think might be those methods?
Something like the previous lesson, like the higher order functions.
Right. So a higher order function, right? Like the ones that we worked on yesterday, right? Like for each, I'm blanking on all the rest after that, but we definitely talked in depth. But those methods, right? Those are instances of methods defined in the class of an array, right? So an array is a class, right? Like in every array that you create is an instance of that class. So the methods that you've called on those instances are defined in the class object, right, of an array. Seems a little bit heady, but that's kind of one example. I can think of one other example too that we might have talked about. This is all the way back last week, which feels like years ago now, doesn't it? Can anyone volunteer what they think I might be referring to? Oh, man, I stumped you all. It's only 10:45 Eastern. All right. Well, what I'm thinking about is, recall when we were talking about numbers, right? And in some cases, we are using something like capital M math dot something, and then passing a number as an argument. That is another instance of a method that's defined as a part of the math class, right? Because math is a class. Now, the application is slightly different. And I want you to just think about that on a high level, right? Those methods, method is another word for function. So we'll think about that when we're talking about object-oriented programming. So when we define a class, right? And so I referenced that class, the math class, the array class, right? Those are classes that are defined in the JavaScript language. We also, as programmers, have the ability in JavaScript to define whatever class we want. And so we get a lot more power in doing so. When you define a class, you define a blueprint for an object. This technically doesn't define any data, but it does define what the class name means, and really more specifically, what the object of the class will consist of and what operations can be performed on such an object. Now, in this lesson, we'll be covering how to implement object-oriented programming with JavaScript. Now, I will say this, the concept of object-oriented programming is language agnostic. You can apply these principles in whatever languages you learn during this course or after this course. Some people really love object-oriented programming. Others really don't. You know, so your mileage may vary here. The lesson that we're doing here is just conceptual. We'll certainly show how to do this specifically in JavaScript, but I just want you to frame it in your head, to know that if you happen to like these principles, and you happen to learn other languages that you like more than JavaScript, I would say more than likely you can take what you're learning today and just apply it elsewhere as well. It's the beauty of object-oriented programming. One other thing to note as framing for this one as well, the code that you write for the rest of the remainder of the cohort, you might not directly create classes, and directly write things in an object-oriented manner, but you will see a lot of these principles and syntax and applications as we get into more advanced kinds of lessons, specifically React. React uses this in a way. Now, they have gotten away from it, sort of. I might be confusing you all. Who knows? Maybe I've said too much. Maybe I've said enough. REM reference for y'all. All right, cool. So that's objects. And also, by the way, we're defining classes, but the primary data type that we are going to be using and working with in this particular lesson is an object, right? And so this object gives us a ton of flexibility. We can create key value pairs. You'll notice in our example here, where we are talking about a car, we can create different functions inside of an object and call those functions on the object. What do we find pretty interesting about this code snippet that we're looking at right here? If you're all checking out my screen, what are you seeing that's interesting or not interesting? What do you recognize in this block of code?
There's a function inside the object.
Right, we have one function. We actually have 3 functions, right? So we have a function defined as drive, one defined as GPS, which takes in a parameter that we refer to as location. We have another one called paint, which takes in a parameter known as new color and does something as well. Also notice there's an interesting new keyword in here called this, right? So we'll touch upon that a little bit as we actually construct something using object-oriented programming. So it looks very similar to what you have seen in previous days with this object notation. So if you're feeling comfortable with working with objects, maybe object-oriented programming or defining classes and defining functionality within those classes might seem pretty easy. If not, this is a great way to still get more comfortable with objects. So before we actually get into the code itself, a few reasons why we might use object-oriented programming, or at least that approach in programming as a whole. So there are four basic tenets here. Provides us with a level of abstraction, which is effectively like hiding all but the relevant data about an object in order to reduce complexity and increase efficiency. What this kind of means is you can basically write out, and will do so in the text area, you can basically write out any kind of functionality in a class, and you don't have to necessarily repeat that, and it's a little bit hidden from the rest of your code as well, right? A great example, right? The for each loop, right? Or the for each method that we call on an array. You don't have to know exactly every line of code that's written to make that work, right? You can just take for each and call it right on an array, and it does the thing that it does. So that's kind of a level of abstraction with that method and some of the other higher order functions. Encapsulation. It's a process of combining data and functions into a single unit. So say a little bit of a different concept here, right? And we'll kind of get into that as we write some of the code. Like you're just basically siloing off some code in a specific way. Inheritance. This enables new objects to receive or inherit the properties and methods of existing objects. So I like to think of this as like, everyone has two parents, right? Two biological, places of input, I guess, right? And you inherit some traits from one parent, you inherit some traits from another parent, maybe you even inherit traits from grandparents, things like that. So when writing in an OOP manner, you can create behavior in your program that does something similar to that as well. So it's pretty nice. That actually helps to reduce code in a way, and we'll see how that could work. And last, as a part of the inheritance, polymorphism allows many forms of the same type of object through inheritance, right? I'll try to wear my best. Who's the British documentarian that talks about nature all the time? David Attenborough, right? So when we're talking about polymorphism, we can think of something like that you would find in nature, right? Like there is potentially like a mammal class, and then from a mammal class, like all mammals inherit certain traits. And then from there, there's like subclasses of like humans, and what a dolphin's a mammal, right? Various other mammals, and then they can have subclasses from them. And how those particular instances of those classes and subclasses, those morph as you get more specificity. So this can be achieved using OOP. So I've said a lot of high-end stuff, have I not? Before I move forward and we actually start to break down some of the code, any questions? I know, I walked right into that. The old trap that I've walked into for the past week and a half, which is like talk a lot at you and then ask you if you have questions without doing a line of code. All right, well, let's do that. So we are going to, I think as our first example, they talk about cars in here.
to the chart, baby. Just stop
I
it.
think I might deviate from the car example and use something
Thank
a
you.
little bit more relevant in my life. But we'll start off by taking a look at these code snippets right here. You have a car of Celica and you have a car of Civic, right? And this is us writing out two separate objects, right, in our program. But these two objects don't, they share some key value traits, right? Both of these have a key of model, right? Maybe they don't. Both of these have a key of color with a value. Both have a key of fuel with a number. Both have a drive and a refuel method as well included in them. But there is kind of an issue. This code is very well organized. But do we see something problematic about writing out all of our objects like this?
Are you repeating ourselves?
We are repeating a lot of code, are we not? And there is, we'll use the OOP stuff to kind of write out just the definition of the class. And then we will go and basically like try to make instances of these, right? So let me just go through here. Here we're talking about the ability to create a make car function. And we'll get to like doing a version of this with our classes in just a bit. So I'm gonna deviate from the example of cars because I don't know that everyone here is a car person. And honestly, the examples I'm about to give, I don't know if anyone is truly a guitar person. But I have like 6 guitars here, right? And I want to create some code to replicate these objects, right? So let's examine a guitar. Take this one. What are some things that are inherent to a guitar?
Color?
So we have a color. Yeah. So we're going to pseudocode this. Guitar characteristics. Someone said color. Yeah, we can do that. Color.
String.
Strings. Yeah, we have strings. We can even break this down a little bit, right? Like, because we have I'm breaking everything. How many would be on this one?
Or it's a bass.
Yeah, it's a bass. Excuse me. It's really dusty too. So I haven't played bass. Versus how many are on this one, right? 6, I think. You even have guitars that have 7 and 8 strings. So we could say maybe string count, right? Or even strings would be like a number. And by the way, the suggestion with the bass is a good concept around inheritance, right? Maybe we can subdivide from there. What else did we see on these things? We had color, we had strings.
Neck.
Neck, yeah, neck. Some guitars have 2 necks. If you're Steve Vai or the guy from Cheap Trick, you got 5 necks. All right, so we can do a neck count. I'm noticing something about this particular guitar. Would I be able to play this one at a campfire? No, right? So this is
versus acoustic.
Yeah, electric versus acoustic, right? Acoustic. Let's spell then. There we go. All right, so let's see. We have strings, we have neck count, we have color, we have electric versus acoustic. What are some things that I can do with this guitar, right? So let's maybe think about some methods.
The chord.
Yeah, that speaks more to my ability, which could be good or bad. But what is something that every person could do theoretically, right? Like you can play a guitar, right? So we play.
You play, produce sound.
Ooh, I like that. Play. All right, produce sound. What do you mean? Like plug it into an amp or something like that?
No, like I meant after you play, a sound has been created.
Yeah. We'll keep that in the play method if that's all right.
Okay.
So we'll say produce sound, right?
I know that it doesn't depend that much on the guitar, but you could say the genre of music that I can play just for the sake of, writing stuff in the index.
Yeah, that's true. We'll say we'll do a genre method, right? Because as you can see by my collection, it's like, really each human being, each person, technically all you need is one guitar. But if you're like a huge consumer like I am and listen to like maybe 8 different genres, you tell yourself you need a specific guitar for a specific genre. So we'll say that genre. What genre does this guitar play? All right, cool. And maybe we'll give it like another we'll give this another one, right? Like we'll just say like if you have an electric guitar, you got these like particular knobs, right? So you can do something with these knobs, right? You could do something like turn up volume, right? If it's an electric guitar, you can do that. We'll even say acoustic because some acoustic guitars can do that as well. All right, cool. So we have some instances here, right? We have some things, some characteristics that exist for a guitar. Also, admittedly, I wanted to do a guitar because I've done my car 8 times. I'm not a car guy. So thank y'all for humoring me here. All right. So we want to, the first thing we want to do is define this as a class. So there's a keyword that you use in JavaScript. It is class, right? So when defining a class, you need to start with the specific keyword. JavaScript is going to reference this. It's going to recognize that the next bit of code or the block that you're writing is part of a class definition. The other thing that we're going to do is actually give this class a name. And I want you to pay very close attention to syntactically what I'm doing here. We're going to give it a class, and that name can be almost any name that you want, but specifically in JavaScript, when defining a class, you want the name to be capitalized. Now, some of you might have recognized throughout some of the lessons when I see you having a variable name with a capital letter, and I tell you to not do that, that is because when you're reading JavaScript and you see a capitalized letter or a capitalized word, I should say, not camel case, but capitalized, the implication there is that it is a class. And so that's what we're doing here. So cool. We have started our definition of guitar. So cool. We've got this going here. That is not all, right? So when this class is defined, we're also going to, as a part of the definition, we're going to start off with what's known as a constructor method. And this word constructor is a specific word in JavaScript reserved for the purpose of creating an instance of the class that you're defining. So on line 12, you cannot use another word. Like constructor is reserved in JavaScript. It is for this purpose, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just add some of the syntax around that. So when we are constructing a guitar, in this case, or any instance of a class, we are going to want to pass it various traits, right? So we will define those traits as the parameters of this constructor method. As I'm typing this out, what looks familiar about like this syntax that we're writing right now?
It feels like an array. No, not an array. The one we've been doing for the functions.
Right. This syntax looks similar to a function, right? It's because it is. You have parentheses here that are defining, when you call a function, right? When we whenever we call an example function, right? The way you call it is to have the parentheses there. So this is a method. It looks like a function. So that feels familiar, right? Good observation. So as we're constructing these guitars, because I know you're all guitarists and are extremely happy about this example and you love it. This is the best class you've ever had. It's all the guitarists out there. Let's go ahead and let's just add these characteristics into our constructor, right? So we said color. And these parameters, by the way, they can be anything that you want to name them as. So we said color, we'll say strings, we'll say next, and then we'll say we'll say type, right? So just to color, just as a reference. Strings, next, and what did we say? This is going to be type, right? So these are the traits. We can think of these as us defining the key value pairs for our objects as we're defining the constructor. So I'm passing these 4 parameters in here. But in order to associate that with an instance of this guitar, I need to add some more syntax. We're gonna talk about this this keyword in just a moment. So when we pass color in, we're going to set it to a value of this color, right? And use a semicolon at the end of that. We'll do the same thing with strings. This dot strings. It's going to be set to the value, the parameter that's passed in. And do we think we're going to do the same thing for the next 2 as well? Yep. So this dot next, and also this dot type being equal to type. Interesting, right? All right. So we have defined what we just did there. We've literally defined a class. This class is defined. If we create an instance of this class, it will be an object that is an instance of the guitar class. We will have created one guitar. I know I'm excited about this. I actually like this type of code organization. This is really, really kind of, for me, visually nice, right? Really cool. So let's go ahead and, given what we have here, we'll add more to this class later. I just want to show you like the difference between defining the class and then creating one instance of that class, right? Because this is, you can think of this as us defining the guitar factory, right? This is the thing that makes the guitars, but we haven't made one yet. All right, so we will create an instance of a guitar. This one's going to be the blue guitar that I have right over here, right? This guy. All right, so we're going to create an instance. You set a variable to it, set it equal, and now we know this is a class, right? So in order to generate one of these, we need to use a keyword called new, right? And then the name of the class. So this is what actually calls the constructor, this new keyword. And then inside of that, we pass in the arguments that refer to these different attributes that we want. So this was a blue guitar. It has 6 strings right now. It has 1 neck, and it is an electric guitar. So this is us like actually creating an instance of this. And as always, if I do something, I want to console log it, right? Oops, you got to use the right syntax then. There we go. So let's actually see what we get when we do this, right? I'm going to go back to the terminal. Actually, before I even run this, does everyone have some version of this going on their local machines? Cool. Maybe I've gone very slow comparatively. Maybe you've already made like 20 guitars. Let me go ahead and run this. So node index.js. And notice what we get from that console log. We get the output that tells us what class it is. We get the object literal of it, and we get the key value pairs as well. So cool. Awesome. We can't really do anything with this guitar, but I now have a blueprint. Let me go and make my other guitars. We'll put this one away. We'll put this one here, right? We have a black one. It's from the 80s. It literally has no strings on it. It is really broken. I think this was in a shed for like 15 years, so that's not cool. But so we can just add this, right? We have defined this class. So all we need to do now is just do something like this. A lot more speed here with this. It's a color of black. This one has 0 strings. It has 1 neck and it's an electric guitar. These, okay. I'm gonna say electric. I think we all know what that is. And console log that. Let's see what we get. Cool, so we get the 2 instances of the guitar. What advantages do we see with how this is, what this is doing for us? If you were to just look at this.
It's really easy to update your data set. So like if you have a class of students and you need data on each student, you can input a new student really easily.
Oh yeah, yeah, see? So this is great. Like we can very quickly construct something. You've used an example like students, which is more universal than guitars, but I think that is very true. So we can do that. So now I could, if I have 6 of these, right? I've got the blueprint of this. I'll just go ahead and create the other versions of that. So we have a surfboard guitar. This is going to be new. Wood grain has actually, it also has no strings on it. 1 neck, electric. And how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The other one, Telecaster. This one's going to be a white guitar. This one has 6. You can already see where this is this gets easier, right? We have this striped guy. I don't know if y'all know what this is. This looks really, really terrible. But if you know, you know. So that's going to be the EVH one. Striped. 6, 1 electric. The other one. You know, that's enough. So this is cool. You can generally generate these pretty quickly. And there are quicker ways to make this happen. We can certainly try that out. But yeah, I've got this class defined. I've got 5 instances being built out with minimal code, and you know, just console log them to see how it goes. There we go. Each one of them shares the same. They all have an instance of the same trait. It's easy to generate them. So yeah, pretty nifty thing here. Yes, Jenna.
Could you nest all of this into an object so you could call like all of Ben's guitars?
Yeah, so you could, when you're saying nest it into an object, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would, at the moment with what code exists at the moment, what I have here, you could just have an object literal, right? And yeah, let's see if we can do blue guitar, black guitar. Ooh, we're using some of the stuff we learned yesterday, right? Which is like, is this gonna work with like some destructuring here? Surf for guitar, Telecaster, and EVH. Let's see if this works. It could not work. Oh, you need to set that equal to something. There we go. So is this what you're referencing? What you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
Let's see what this is and what it does. Ah, yeah. So you have each one of these in here. And because it's, so there's something a little bit different here too. It's an instance of a class. So we're going to get that in our output, right? But basically you have key value pairs referring to the objects that are here. So this is the key value there. We're using destructuring when we got that from yesterday, right? Like I have the instance, I am just passing that here, and in our program, it's letting us know that you can destructure that into the objects. So like if I console logged dot blue guitar dot what did I say this was? Type. So we can use that object like the dot notation, right, with the objects we've created to then get down to a value at a key. This might be a little too low. Is that visibly better? Okay. I have yet to hear a question regarding this word right here. Yes, Magdalena.
So no, I'm not asking about this. I wanted to ask, so if all of the new instances that we created have like sort of inherited all of these color, string, next, and type, can they have ones on their own that the parent does not have?
So that would be kind of like basically what you're saying is, can they have traits that are not in the constructor?
Yes. Can they have like their own properties or their own key value?
So their own key value. So like if an instance of a guitar had, like if you're like, oh, I made a guitar and maybe we use what we've learned before, like the object notation to try to set like a different variable, right? Or like a different instance, right? So let's like we learned with objects, you can just give it like another key and another value, right? Will this work? Let's see. I don't know. And then I will also just console log just to see if this works.
What does EVH stand for?
Eddie Van Halen. I said that like everyone was born in the 80s or something. Yeah, during a break, I'll talk more about what that guitar specifically is. So interested, did I try to console? Oh, sorry. I have an error there. Let's rerun that. So you can, if you wanted to, we notice that we have added a key value pair of location to that guitar and then console logged it. So you can add another key value after the fact, should you want to.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to the question I was hoping to get a question about. And maybe you've all read the notes. The word this.
I think you said after you construct and then you add the attributes, this dot color means you're setting the color to the color so you can use it later on.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay.
But one other thing that is specific to the word this in the instance here, and I really kind of hate this particular spiel because I use this a lot as I'm saying this. What lines 13 through 16 imply here is when you are constructing one instance of a guitar, the keyword this implies that whatever color was passed in that constructor is associated with that instance of the guitar and no other ones. So you need to have the this keyword in the constructor referring to those specific attributes that you're defining. That is basically what is implied with the word this. It is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. It is meant for the use case here. You'll see it in other instances as we get further along. But the easiest way to look at those words, when you see this inside of a constructor, it's basically saying that when you define the instance, the new guitar that has a color of blue, only that guitar has a color of blue and none of the other ones. And same with all of the other traits. But y'all already knew that. Cool. We do a pulse check here, and I feel like I have gone fairly long as well. The pulse check that I'm doing is we actually covered a good percentage of the objectives here, but we'll say I can use the new keyword to create an instance of a class, and I can create many instances of a class. Let me know if you can do this. And while we do that, it's 23 after. Let's take a 7-minute break. So yeah, get up, stretch around, all that kind of stuff. I will stop sharing my screen, and if anyone wants to know why I have a stride for a guitar, I'll definitely tell you about it, but also I might not.
Recording stopped.
How much money did you pay Eddie for his guitar?
I think I got it on Reverb. Obviously, it is clearly not his, but his company's. I think this was $1,000. It's cool though, you know.
Does it only have a single humbucker?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I was about to ask that too.
Oh, interesting.
It's like yeah, it's nifty. It's like got the best neck I've ever played on. That's
Cool.
pretty cool. But you know, it's kind of like I can play like one part of Eruption and like half of 3 Van Halen songs. So you know, I bet you pretty much like 80% of the demographic that buys those guitars.
So I hope you know what this means, Ben.
What does it mean?
It means you're gonna have to play for us one day.
I keep
have to happen.
I keep getting told that, and I never do it. So,
oh, we're gonna hold you to it. Don't you worry. We'll hold
No,
you
what
to
needs to happen is we need to find other coders that know how to play instruments, and then we'll call ourselves the debuggers.
Oh man, that's
There we go.
that's
I
good.
like it.
So
I know
the,
how to rock on the drums. All I'm saying, I do know how to kick it.
there you go. Nice. Yeah.
Fairly good at rhythm guitar.
Yeah, I
My-
was looking up where Van Halen was formed because I knew it was in California, but it was in Pasadena.
yeah, that,
Because I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I remembered that the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they were formed in Los Angeles, California. And the Chili's, they're all right. I wouldn't turn them off if they came on. And then so I was looking up how many bands were formed specifically in California.
a lot.
So yes, well, so many, but so many famous ones that like if you were a kid from the 90s or the early 2000s, and if your parents were fans of like classic rock or you listen to the radio, that's like most of what they played was from like California rock bands.
Mhm.
Motley Crue, the Eagles, Guns N' Roses,
Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine. I mean, my parents didn't listen to that, but they're still good.
Yeah. There's a period of time where you went to
Weezer.
California to make it happen. Not so much now.
Well, what's that saying? Half of Silicon Valley's blood is rock and roll. It was Steve Jobs was inspired by the Beatles
Yeah.
to invent the iPod or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that is I'd say that's a fairly accurate assessment. But yeah. Interestingly enough, there was a commentary about like other instructors. Jeremy, who is the lead instructor for Group 2, he plays like 8 instruments. So there you go.
8.
And my primary instrument is actually drums. It's not guitar. So
And I wish I could play drums. It looks like so much fun.
it is.
I just can never get my like rhythm right. Like I always end up just like what is it, the bass drum or whatever. I always just end up hitting the foot pedal because my foot always taps to the beat. So it's always just boom, boom, boom. Like I don't know if that's how that's supposed to be used.
I tried to learn guitar whenever I was younger, and I didn't have the talent for it. I didn't have the nimble fingers to play guitar and do like the frets and everything. But then I moved on to drums and realized that I was pretty good at that, and I was able to play in a high school orchestra.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun. But it's definitely an instrument where if you are bad, it's very apparent. But if you're really good, then well, it's actually harder to notice if you're really good, unless like you have a band where they have like a lot of like drum solos, like if you're Neil Peart, or if you're the drummer from White Stripes, where there's only like 2 people in the band. Then it's more apparent. But like I've always found like the drums are always there in like most genres of music, but they're always hanging out in the background. But they're immensely important, like especially in like hip hop or pop or rap. I mean, they usually change it for more of like an electric style drum kit, but it's always like in the background, never up front. But I've always felt like if you're really bad at drums, it's very apparent. But if you're not, if you're good, you get the credit.
Right.
So have you eever listened to math rock, Jackson? It's a genre.
Math rock?
Yeah, it's a genre of rock. It's called math rock.
I might have without knowing it. I'd like to think of myself as like a rock aficionado. It's most of what I listen to.
So it's my favorite because the drums are usually so complex because they like change between like oh my god, I'm blanking on all my musical terms. Instead of being 4/4, it's like 3/4. They change between these different what's the word I'm looking for?
Tempo, or you're talking about time signatures.
Yeah, time signatures. They change between them, and they do it in such a way it like fluidly goes through it. If you ever get a chance, just look up math rock and look up some bands from there. There's some really good Chinese and Korean, South Korean math rock bands. But if you like drums, that's the place to go.
You know, I actually really like looking into foreign bands of specific genres. You never know what you might find, and sometimes it's really good. Like if you guys have ever, if you guys like rap music, French rap is actually really good.
Yeah, my girlfriend's really into French rap, so I'm I listen to it every time in the car. I don't get a choice.
Nice, most excellent. French rap right now is the perfect segue to welcome back, everybody. Hope y'all enjoyed the break. I learned a lot actually during the break here regarding music. So cool. Welcome back. We have a couple of things we're going to cover. I should start a thread somewhere about like music recommendations soon. So we'll do that. But let me go ahead and
Recording in
resume
progress.
the recording and share my screen. Can we all see that? Perfect. So I'm really just going to cover like two larger concepts with the OOP, or two things that we really kind of omitted here, which is we created a constructor that gave us these particular key value pairs, right? Like these traits, like these guitars have traits associated with them. But we actually didn't do, we didn't explore like some of the more robust features of a class definition. So I've got these 5 guitars like created here. I've got the definition down here, right? But you can also, we'll go back up to like something that we had up here, right? We had like play, we had genre, and we had volume. And we were saying that these were going to be the methods of said guitars, right? But we never actually created these methods, and thus we never called the methods on an instance of a guitar. So let's just create one method. And well, maybe we'll create 2 methods. It'll be super simplistic, but the intent here is so that you can see what it looks like to create a method, and then also like what it looks like to call a method on an instance of the guitar, right? So we'll do that. Hopefully it looks very, very similar. So the method we'll do here is play. Looks a lot like the constructor method, right? Like we have the parentheses, we have the block of code. And in this case, we will just console log, this guitar is being played or something along those lines, right? Super simplistic method here. So this definition is inside of our class definition. And if I just wanted to call the method on the instance there, you would just do something like, telecaster.play or something like that, right? So let's see if this actually like works out here. We'll call it here. It doesn't require an argument. Let's refresh the code. There we go. So we're calling an instance on that particular method there. Cool, 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 cool. So that's how we can define something within that. You can also pass, you can also define that you want to pass parameters into like that particular method as well. A lot like the methods that we've defined or the functions that we've defined in the past. Yes, Michelle.
I'm confused with the play part. So I know you said it's a method. What are the things above it called? Oh, it's a class.
Yeah, so line 12, we'll just like kind of the major parts of this. Line 12 is like where we define the class name. And everything in between the opening curly bracket, like right after the beginning of that definition, and the closing curly bracket that matches that. Everything that is inside of these brackets are things that are defined as a part of the class. And the first method that we're adding is a constructor method. And when you do new and then name of the class and then various traits that are passed in there, those go with that constructor. So you actually have 2 methods here. what we're defining here on line 20 through 22 is just a custom method that is only applicable to guitars, or at least this class, which is the guitar class.
So will it always be strings or will it be?
So this is like super simplistic, but what we could do, you can do anything with a method or a function that you want to, right? Let me go a little bit backwards through my code and then maybe add some different kinds of functionality here, right? So maybe we'll just say, instead of, we'll make this a little bit simpler. So for those that are coding along, apologies. So we'll just say a guitar has like color, strings, and volume. All right, we'll make it such that, and the volume is, we'll say like this volume. There you go. So we have that guitar, strings, volume. We'll just set this up to where all the guitars start off with a volume of 0 now. So we have modified the constructor, right? So when I rerun these, all these guitars have an ability, a volume that has a number. So we'll just say, we'll change the method to turn it up, right? And what we can do here is you can, instead of like we were just console logging a string, we could say, you might need to make an adjustment or pass the instance in there as a part of this. But what we could do is something along the lines of this dot volume plus equals 5. Right, so when you call up turn it up, the volume of that instance changes. So Michelle, I think I'm targeting here that you were saying, does it always have to be a string or something like that? Or what's happening in the method? Is it just like console logging strings or something? The short answer is no. You can do whatever you want with it. So if we call it on the Telecaster, we'll console log the Telecaster first. And then we'll console log it afterwards, right? We'll give ourselves a little bit of context too. Let's see if this works. I might have a syntax error here. I might not. Before we move forward, does anyone want me to hold on to this code? Or okay, Julian has told me to hold on, so I'm going to hang back for a minute. Okay, grab some water. Julian, are we good? All right, perfect. So we're going to run this and see if this works as intended. So interestingly enough, that instance of the guitar, you'll note that the volume was 0. And then we called the turn it up method on the volume. And really the method here was to add 5 to the value of this dot volume, right? So we're making a modification to our object or the instance of a guitar. And if you look at that again, you'll note that the volume has changed. So in short, these methods can do anything. You can use a method to change a value on the instance of the object. You can use the method to do whatever you want, right? Like you can think of it like how you have functions that work like that. So good question. We were using a super simplistic one where it was just like, hey, I'm console logging a string. But these can really get much more flexible here.
Thank you.
Cool. So cool. We have methods. I'm going to do a pulse check around that. All right, so I got the pulse check up in the classroom. Make sure to read it carefully before responding. Don't just throw a green check mark at me. And if you don't, that's okay too. Ooh, nice. A new
That was
one.
me. No, that was me. Just because like I feel like if we start, I'm thinking of yesterday, I was struggling with the work.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to see this, like, does it go hand in hand, or will this be a whole different I guess, will this be inside of a function, or will this be a separate like line?
Oh, yeah. So combining a few different things. We shall see. I will say I didn't do any framing for the day, but the entire afternoon is 2 labs and a homework. So this is the lecture, and this entire afternoon you'll have time to practice all these concepts. So it might be a little bit tricky. Ooh, who gave the
What's going on?
crossed fingers? Are you hoping you get it? Is that the idea? Okay, cool. We hope we got it. That's cool. All right, so we have it feels like we feel good about what you do to define a method and then call it on the instance of the particular class. We're going to talk about one more concept, and that is inheritance, right? So this is where I'm going to go ahead and scrap everything that I had in this code. I'll swing back over to the notes so we can stick a little bit more closely to those. In that way, if you're following along, this makes some sense, right? So, and also this part of the notes talks about dogs and cats. And anytime I can talk about dogs, not so much cats,
You promised us a cat at least once.
I did promise a cat. That's right. I did. This is that, you know what? I can tell you are listening and you like care because you're like, you said cats and today is the day. All right. So cats it is, but also with dogs. So we're going to actually talk about inheritance, right? So what we want to do is we're going to create a parent class, and then we're going to create 2 classes that inherit from that one, right? So dogs and cats. Make sure I spell this right. I always feel like I don't. Inheritance. So if we want to reduce a little bit of reduce our code and also make it such that like when you have child classes, they inherit behaviors, you can basically just use the principle of inheritance. So dogs and cats are both animals, correct? So we're going to create the animal class. So same kind of syntax, we're defining the class of animal, right? We have the opening and closing brackets. And the first thing that we're going to have here is we're going to add a constructor, right? So our base animal class are just basically going to have a name and a breed. So we are going to use the this keyword, this dot name, equal to the parameter that we pass as name. This dot breed is equal to the breed that we're passing. And one thing I did not do in the guitar example, but that you can do in your class definitions is you can add traits that you are not like defining in the parameters of the constructor. Now, this might have been the question that Magdalena asked earlier, like, can you add a trait that's not explicitly a parameter. And we tried it out by just adding the trait to the object after it was created, right? Well, you can also have that particular trait in the constructor, but not passed in the parameters. So this can be accomplished this way as well. Yes, Dylan.
Oh, I just had a quick question about the constructor. Is that a baked in method? Like, do you have to, it has to be called constructor? You can't name it another function?
Yes, I think the terminology you're looking for is constructor. What you're kind of talking about is like, does the word have to be specific? Does it have to be constructor? And the answer to that is yes. And the terminology that we're using here is constructor. The word specifically itself is what's known as a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So this has specific implications. Just like the word class, that is reserved as well. Like when we use the word class in the JavaScript language, that has a specific functionality. And so yeah, same with constructor. You have to use that for this reason. Good question. All right, so we have the animal, it has a constructor. We're just gonna define another method. And also as a part of this method, you can, we didn't do this in the last example, but you can pass a parameter to go in there, right? So all of the animals, right? Animals eat. We have each animal inherently will have a diet that is just an array. But anytime an animal eats a food, we'll just add that food into that array, right? So just do this dot diet dot, and how do I just put something in an array?
Brackets?
Well, that's how you grab something. But what if I were to like want to? Yeah, we can do push, right? So you can push the food, right? Then we'll just console log this diet after the food has been pushed, right? So we're doing multiple things here. And as always, I like to test out what I've written. I write in very small increments. So we'll start with the dog, right? So new keyword, animal, right? So this is a class of animal. Obviously, we're going to talk about Lucy. So Lucy is that dog, and Lucy is a lab mix. We'll console log dog just to see that the construction works. Does anyone want me to wait before I run the code? Okay, I will wait. Definitely do let me know if I'm going way too fast. I have a tendency to not realize that. Okay, yes, Kat.
So if you are like leaving this diet open with just the brackets like that, if doing something like that, would you specifically then not want to put diet in the parentheses next to constructor, or would it like not necessarily matter?
So this is kind of, that's an interesting question, right? I don't know if this is going to be the most satisfying answer, but I think about the parameters that I pass in a constructor, like so in this case, name and breed, as like, is kind of like how it's like, you know, when you are born and it's like you're given a name, right? Typically. So it's like when cat is created, cat gets the name cat. And you know, any other things that come along with like those individual things there. I am treating diet as something that will be modified after the fact, right? So I don't necessarily have to give it a trait right off or give it values right off the bat. It's not like I know that that's not necessarily the most specific type of answer, but it's kind of like if you're thinking, like when designing a class and you're thinking about like traits that you want to give an instance right away versus traits that you feel like you can modify after the fact. If it's a trait that I want to assign right off the bat, that might be a hint that this is a parameter I want to define.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it doesn't matter. Like there's a lot of flexibility.
Okay.
It's more of like how I think about class design.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So let's run this code and see if Lucy is actually created. Cool. So we have the instance there and the diet is empty, right? So we can also, let's also just assume, let's call Lucy.eat. What does she eat? I feed her every day. Kibble. Yeah, she eats kibble. All right. Ooh, Lucy is not defined because it's dog. Of course. All right. We have that. There we go. So kibble is passed through. That method is working for us. I'm just doing this to check to make sure that all of that has worked. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that code now. So we are figuring out that, well, actually, we want to incorporate cats. Ben has talked about like getting cats into the mix, but we need to define a child class of dog, and then we can define a child class of cat because they behave slightly differently. They have some things that they share, but they behave slightly differently. So let's define the class of dog first that will inherit from an animal. And the thing I want you to kind of notice is some of the keywords that I'm using in this definition. So we're starting off with class. We're giving it the name that we want. And then there's an interesting word that comes after that, extends. And then after the word extends is the word animal. So what do y'all think that that's doing? What do you think this extends word is doing?
Saying that a dog is an extension of the animal class?
Basically, yeah. Yeah, pretty much, right? It's this, and by the way, just to an earlier question, this word extends is a reserved keyword. In JavaScript, extends has a purpose. So when you're creating a class that is inheriting from a parent class, you definitely need to use this extends keyword. And just as a little preview, this will not be the last time that we see this kind of syntax in more advanced stuff that we do. So just a cool little hint for like 6 weeks from now. So cool. We've defined this class. Let's go ahead and define a constructor, right? So we'll take a name, breed, and you know what? Dogs have tails. They wagged. Most dogs have tails, even if they're like little ones. So a dog has a tail. And this dot wagging tail is going to be equal to tail. And then also, we'll just say that, excuse me, the thing that dogs do that's different than cats is that they bark. In my case, one dog barks a lot and the other one doesn't bark at all. And in this case, so we've used console log. We've also modified our instances. In your methods, you can also have a return statement as well. Just want to kind of show that we can do all the things with our particular methods. So bark, hello, this is dog. My name is this dot name. All right. Cool. So we have this dog class defined. Let's go ahead and add a subclass for cat, right? So same general concept. Class keyword cat capitalized, extends animal, right? So we're creating two classes that inherit from the animal class. You're going to want a constructor. We're going to pass name, breed, and cats have lots of lives, or at least 9 as far as I know, or at most 9. I forget what the thing is with cats. And in that constructor, we're going to do this dot num lives equals num lives. And then we're going to give this cat a method that's different than the bark method, right? Meow. Cool. And this one will return something as well. Meow. Keep typing in mew. I am not a dog. My name is this.name.
Do you know why when I put this dot name with the $sign, mine stayed orange?
So reminder, look very closely. If you can, let me see if I can make this. See, look very closely at my strings. These are not single quotes. These are those like backticks or those smart quotes. So if you have an Apple keyword, it's on the left-hand side, top left of your keyboard underneath the escape key, I believe. So if you're not using those, this is going to stay orange. There we go. Cool. I have a subclass of dog. I have a subclass of cat. Is everyone at roughly the same level here? We are. All right, let's try some of this out. I have a very sneaky suspicion that something's not going to work here, that I've omitted something very important. But let's see what happens. So I'm going to create the dog first. So let Lucy equals. So it's going to be the same keyword new. You can use the word dog here. So that's the class that we're trying to create an instance of. So the name is going to be Lucy, lab, mix, and she has a tail, wagging tail. We'll say that is a Boolean for whatever reason. And let's console log Lucy now. Oh, there we go. Let's see what happens. Ooh. Uh-oh. I got a very descriptive error message. All right. So I've tried to inherit. I've used this extends keyword. And then my code tells me that I have a reference error. Must call super constructor in derived class before accessing this or returning from derived constructor. And it's yelling at me at line 54. Boop, 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 boop. Ah, okay. So if I'm going to use this extends keyword, and it's, I'm sorry, dog extends animal. Yeah, if I'm going to use this extends keyword, right, to reference name and breed, which are in the constructor for animal, I actually need to use another keyword as well. And that keyword is super. And then as a part of that, I'm going to pass in the traits that I am inheriting from the parent class. So if I scroll back up to animal, you'll notice in the constructor there is a name and a breed. So if I'm using extends, I've also got to use super so that it references that parent class as well. Let's try this again. basically super calls the constructor on the parent. That's what that is shorthand for. There we go. So I have created this dog. It has a diet, by the way. It's pretty interesting. So I got that from the constructor as well, and a wagging tail. And I have a thought question for you here. In the dog class, I've only defined the bark method. Do we think I can call the eat method that's defined in the animal class? Daniel says, or Dylan says no. I see some thumbs up. Dylan, I called you out. I didn't mean to totally call you out.
No, that's okay. I just feel like because it's not part of the super, but I guess that those might just be arguments. So maybe I don't know.
Right. So I think theoretically you are thinking kind of in a direction that makes sense, but maybe we can split apart this and see why that might not be the case. So the method here is eat and you pass food, right? So let's go ahead and Lucy.eat, and she's going to eat squirrels because she's actually caught one before. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to console log Lucy. So remember, eat is defined in that animal class. And it turns out that the dog, that child class inherits the methods that are defined in the parent class and can use them. That's really cool. That's like, you only write that method once, and then you write child classes or children classes, and they can use those methods. Should I go back to the code just to show this? Okay. I saw some looks there that was like, whoa, wait a minute. No, hold on. So we'll just isolate visually the class of animal and the class of dog. Yes, Chaz.
So I imagine I know the answer to this, but say you have class dog, extends animal, blah, blah, blah. And you have your constructor name, but you don't include breed. Neither do you include it in your super, and you don't pass it. It's just not going to pull breed, right? You can like omit breed.
Well, it's actually going to break because you're going to need that if you're inheriting. Like when you create an inheritance, like when you are creating a child class, it's because you want to inherit the stuff that comes with the constructor from the parent class.
So, okay, so I guess the real question I'm asking is, if you make something that extends from another class, it has to inherit everything, all the constructors in the parent class.
So in the constructor, yes, it does.
Okay, just making sure, but not in the super, or in the super as well.
Well, if you're going to use the constructor, you actually have to use the super, right?
Okay, so but the super basically has to be everything that the animal, so in this instance, the animal class has, and then your constructor has to have everything in the animal class, plus whatever else you want to put
This is
okay.
This is correct. And what you have in the super, you're referencing in the constructor there.
Okay.
Cool. But some behavior that's really interesting about this. So for those that wanted to look back at this code, looking at this code, did this answer any questions that existed in your head that maybe you didn't say aloud? I know Dylan said something to the effect of like, well, if you aren't bringing eat down into the child class, it shouldn't work, right? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it makes sense now. I mean, I think I was kind of confused too with sort of what Chaz just said. Makes more sense because it seemed redundant to me that the name and breed and tail would be in the constructor, and then you'd recycle it in the super. And so I figured that would have something to do with the methods as well, or the function. So I think it makes a little more sense now.
Yeah, so I should say in your extension, sorry, I have no idea who that is. in your extensions, right? Like, so you really need to extend this in the constructor of that animal, right? But anything that is defined outside of a constructor is just something that you call. It's not something that is constructed with your instance there. So you don't have to explicitly pass that down. It just comes with the inheritance, right? One other thing, oh, and you know, we didn't even check on the cat either. So let's go ahead and do that here. We need to add the super class here, name, breed. So now we have the super there. Let's go ahead and what's a good cat name? Garfield. Yep, we'll just do that. It's Garfield. So we have a new cat. The name is Garfield. What are cat? I don't know any cat breeds. I'm sorry. What's a good one?
Abby.
Tabby.
Tabby. Okay, Tabby. There we go. And then what is it? Number of lives? 9, right? So that's, there we go. This console log Garfield. Let's also Garfield.meow, right? So we're going to call that just to see that that works. And then we'll do Garfield .eat. And I know Garfield eats lasagna. Right? Everyone knows the reference that I'm referencing here with Garfield, right? Okay, let's give this a shot. There we go. Oh, and I should have console logged Garfield after that, just to see. Sorry. All right, let's try it again. There we go. Cool. So we have created a cat called Garfield. It has the breed and the name as well. You have the diet. You can modify the diet. So that is a method that's inherited from the parent class. That makes that modification as well. Did I, what is meow? Meow, I am not a dog. I am, did that not work? It looks like it did not work, did it? Garfield.meow. Oh, I need to console log this because I'm returning the value. Surprised y'all didn't catch me on that. All right, so we need to actually console log that. So let's rerun this. There we go. So we have our constructed cat. Meow, I'm not a dog. My name is Garfield. It can eat as well. And when it ate the lasagna, it now has the lasagna. Pretty nifty. One thing that's not covered in this lesson, but I think is really interesting. And we'll just say this as a bonus, right? You notice how I have this eat method defined in animal, right? And both animals inherit from it. What if there's a scenario where you want eat to do something differently for one of the animals, right? Like you're like, I'm cool with how eat works for a cat, but I actually think that I need to modify the eat method in a dog. Well, it's pretty straightforward. You just redefine it in the child class that you want, you know, to like make a modification, and it will basically take that definition and use it there, but that will not go over to the sibling class, right? So if we did like this .diet .push, it's like we want that behavior to still happen, but maybe we'll just console log, wow, that was a yummy piece of food, right? So the eat method is slightly different in the dog than from the animal, but the eat method also gets passed down to the cat. in its original state. Let's see. So we have Lucy. And we have Garfield. And Garfield's going to eat lasagna. Doesn't really matter what Lucy eats. She'll eat. What else does she? Yeah, she really likes chicken. Okay, so we'll do that. Oh yeah, I console log that. And with the eat for Garfield, in that definition, we just console logged what happened with the diet. So they both ate. It's just like the dog used the modified version of eat. Do y'all want me to just hold on here and wait 2 minutes while that sits? Okay, we'll hang here, and if questions arise in your head, feel free to ask or raise your hand. Okay. No questions. It feels like we got some thumbs up. I'm gonna do one pulse check here. Ah, yes, Ryan.
So the functions eat or whenever there's much, you're putting console log. Wouldn't you rather do just return?
Yeah, ultimately console log is probably something I want to walk away from. But yeah, I would more than likely want to return this because this actually gives me a value of consequence with which I can use. So we can do
You
that.
want to each, like, you want to bark or meow or eat, you would just, instead of console, you just like return Garfield meow, right? Return.
Yeah, I would want to do that. I've been using console log right now because it is the most efficient way to get something printed to the terminal, right? But ultimately, it's better to return a value and then console that. All right, let's see. Good observation.
Could you go back to the whole please, Ben?
Sure. Hold on, we have a pulse check here. And do you want, what should I have here?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Cool, I've got 9 thumbs up. Does this mean that a more honest answer to this is maybe not comfort, but you're like, I get what you're saying about inheritance. I need to try this myself. It's probably a more appropriate question. To walk away from the blanket.
Oh,
Go
so
ahead.
sorry. Ryan, did you want to talk? Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. For me, I feel like I'm getting the concept of it when we walk through it with you, but when it comes and like following along with the notes, but once we go to the homework, everything just kind of goes out and I forget the purpose of everything we walk through.
Yeah.
I think because
Yeah.
when you're like typing it, I can see it, but then not that I'm not understanding what the purpose is, like once we see the code,
Yeah.
it confuses me.
Yeah, totally. And that actually makes complete sense. And that's by design. So it is very easy to look at me coding something and looking at me describing something. And a lot of these examples are super straightforward, right? It's like, hey, here's a dog, it eats, that kind of a thing. but the actual practice of taking a set of instructions that aren't extremely direct, right, that you have to interpret somewhat, and generating original code to accomplish that is a much more difficult task. So you are not necessarily losing the concepts, you're having to actually practice them. And that's where the learning happens actually.
And I did have a question. So I also like to look back. I know that you record the session and then we look back, but they don't post those until the next day, correct? Because
Yeah.
so when I'm doing the work, sometimes if I can go to the lesson,
Mm-hmm.
but now I know that we have to turn it in that night.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of wing it and then return and check
Some of that is an unfortunate byproduct of Zoom. We are beholden to whenever they give us our recordings. So sometimes that, like in a day like yesterday, where we wrapped up the recording pretty early and we shut the Zoom down right at lunch. As soon as I shut it down, that's when Zoom starts to process. I can get them earlier. But also other times it's come to me at like 2 a.m. So I'm kind of handicapped, for lack of a better word, or I have to wait until I get the recording and then all that stuff. But that's also okay. One thing to note, I should say, about all of these concepts and also our homeworks and our labs and all of that. Everything that we ask you to do in the labs and in the homeworks, you can find a syntactical equivalent in the notes. So what is provided in the notes should be able to give you an answer to every question. Now, when you get into homeworks and they're a little bit more creative, right? Like it's like, we're going to need you to do more abstract things. That's difficult, but syntactically speaking, everything's provided in the notes. So with the exception of today's lesson where I went off on a guitar tangent, which apologies, I try to stick pretty close to the notes, just so if you felt comfortable with what you were seeing there, you can always go back to something that's written down and generally matches what I was talking about, right? So that is by design, so that if you have a different learning style, like a reading versus visual, or if it makes more sense for you to go back to the notes and read every line, we try to keep that in the same line. But what you're experiencing, and what I'm assuming a good majority of the class is experiencing, is actually pretty normal and typical for the material. So it's not a bad thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very visual. So like if I follow along, sometimes it becomes difficult and I get confused, but Chaz has been helping out a lot. So thank you, Chaz. And then sometimes I'll just kind of YouTube videos. And if there's certain, like, for example, if you do like homework, like it explains it to people that are explaining it, not like me seeing the code, but explaining the purpose. I get it. I understand it.
Yeah, totally. I will say, and is everyone good with the visualization here? I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. So I will say, I encourage going and checking out outside
Recording
resources,
stopped.
because I do think it is pretty important to hear different voices around concepts. I will say though, sometimes that can cause more confusion. So definitely tread lightly with that, so it is kind of like a moving target, as it were, to make that happen. But also I enjoy, like, I have several different resources that I like to go to for various concepts, especially when learning things. Sometimes I do use YouTube. Sometimes, a lot of times I try to train myself more on the documentation, because ultimately that's going to be your source of truth, especially when you get into companies and you start using like third-party like services, and like like in the last company that I worked with, there was like 8 different technologies that I was using, or that the company was using. And so you have to be able to traverse that documentation. It's always good to, like when we go to MDN and practice reading, like, oh, what does this say? And then try to synthesize that over into what you write. That might help you a lot, even though it's a big time struggle.
Thank you. Will do.
Yeah. Well, cool, everyone. It is, this lesson had way less breaks. Apologies, but my hope is that you feel relatively comfortable with constructing objects. Oh, I should share my screen for one last thing. So if there were takeaways, let me also make sure I record this.
Recording in
There were
progress.
takeaways from this lesson that I think that you should look at. This is more of a syntax thing. When defining a class, you have, we'll go back to the animal. This class keyword is what you're using. This constructor keyword helps you define the traits. And the syntax looks a lot like objects, right? When inheriting classes, this extends keyword is going to be something that you see, and this super keyword as well. And anytime you see the word this in the context of class creation, is really just telling you that any instance of a trait that you pass is related to the one instance that you're creating. So certainly play around with the code to just check that out. But those are the big takeaways. I feel
Recording
like with
stopped.
class-based stuff, it's just nice to write simple classes. Just write even something kind of frivolous or whatever, and just get used to the syntax. But if you feel comfortable with objects, classes should feel relatively comfortable. It's a good thing. It is 8 minutes until the lunch break. And like I said, not a lot of breaks. So what we can do here, let's take lunch early, but also come back at the regular time. So you get like a little extra 8 minutes. And when you come back at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, we will introduce the first of 2 labs for the afternoon. So just a reminder, your afternoon is working on these concepts. No more lecture for today. It is strictly coding. So enjoy the lunch break. Thank you for humoring me with guitars and stuff. Good music discussion. And we'll see you in a little over an hour. In the classroom Slack channel. Nabila has already sent a link to the intro to OOP exercise lab. So go ahead and work through those. We'll place you into breakout rooms. And we will check in on occasion to see how it's going with you. If you have questions, certainly let us know as well. And you should see a prompt in maybe a minute or 2.
Do you guys see the rooms? Did they open?
They're open now, but no one's assigned yet.
Oh. What just happened? Gosh darn it. Okay, hold on a sec.
Yep.
Oh man, I messed up, guys. I gotta wait 60 seconds.
I know.
I know.
Oh, if it notices no one's in the room, you can.
Okay. How about now?
Hey,
Oh, how's it going?
good. How are you?
Good. forget that you have to click share after. So I just have name and then hi, and then this, the only this I have is like the this.sports teams.
Oh,
Does that kind of make sense?
interesting. Okay, yeah. Awesome, thank you.
I've written in the enroll student that I think it's a little different maybe than what we did today, because in this example, we are whatever is in the enroll student, whatever we pass as student is going to be added to the students array,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what that's doing, right? And so so you're saying, I think you're saying call the enroll student on the student. Yeah, I'm confused. I'm a little
I know,
I'm
right?
gonna try to